Welcome to Vital MTB's 2022 Downhill Bike Test Session. In this video, we will discuss the performance of Propain's Rage CF. To read the full review, head to vitalmtb.com. Over 15 years ago, the materialization of German brand Propain Bicycles coincided with the release of their inaugural model, the Rage. A thoroughbred race bike since its inception, the Rage has undergone 6 iterations over the years. The latest Rage CF model was introduced in 2021 after 2 years of development and feedback from Propain Factory Racing. The standout difference between the Rage CF and its lineage is the orientation of the rear shock in front of the seat tube. The new layout objectively looks incredibly refined and badass and still utilizes Propain's Pro 10 suspension design that features a floating shock with a one-piece rear swing arm. By floating the rear shock between links, the rear suspension boasts exceptional small bump sensitivity, responsiveness, and traction, while a relatively high 38% progression rate mitigates harsh bottom outs. With constantly evolving bike setups and racetracks, Propain sought to make the Rage CF future-proof with multiple points of adjustability. The frame features a straight 1.5-inch head tube to accommodate angle or reach adjust headsets. A flip chip in the upper pivot of the swing arm allows for a mixed-wheeled configuration, and a flip chip in the rear axle dropout gives riders a choice between a 445 or 460 mm chainstay length. With a short 4-day testing period, we only rode the Rage with 29-inch wheels in the short chainstay position. To offer riders the durability needed to handle seasons of downhill racing, the frame is constructed from a blend of carbon intended to balance weight, compliance, and stiffness. Propain also equipped all pivots with double-sealed stainless steel bearings, and the downtube and chainstay protectors are replaceable. Based on Propain's recommended sizing for our test rider heights between 5'10" and 6'2", we tested a large Rage CF with a 465mm reach, 638mm stack height, and 63-degree head tube angle. Compared to the other bikes in the test, the Rage had the shortest reach and wheelbase. Propain offers the Rage in 3 build kits, and we tested the mid-range performance build that retails for $6,029 and is highlighted by a RockShox Boxer Ultimate Fork, RockShox Super Deluxe Ultimate Coil Shock, SRAM X01 7-speed drivetrain with carbon cranks, SRAM Code RSC brakes, 6-pack Millennium cockpit, and Newman Evolution 30 DH aluminum wheels with 2.4-inch Schwalbe Magic Mary tires. Compared to the other bikes in the test, the Rage sported the nicest build and shared similar components with the Nuke-Proof Descent 2.9. However, the Rage featured SRAM's premium Code RSC brakes as opposed to the Code R model found on the Descent, and flaunted RockShox's 2023 Super Deluxe Ultimate Coil Rear Shock, complete with their new hydraulic bottom-out adjustment. So, how did the Rage perform? In true test session fashion, we wrangled together 3 testers to gain a diverse impression of each bike. We then set up camp at Mountain Creek Bike Park in Vernon, New Jersey. Situated only an hour from New York City, Mountain Creek is best known for its impressive variety of trails and short gondola ride. The mountain offers a mix of rough, technical rock gardens, high-speed chunder, steep rock rolls, and flowy jump trails with ripping berms. With the ability to knock out multiple laps per hour and accommodations conveniently located at the base, Mountain Creek served as the perfect location to test this year's bikes. With a tight timeline to shake down 4 downhill bikes, our goal was to find out where each bike excelled or fell short, what nuances set each apart, and ultimately help riders understand which bike would be best for them.
The first bike I tested was the Propain Rage. I was really excited to ride that one just because it's the newest one, the least amount of people have ridden it. It looks really cool. And honestly, it was the one I was most surprised with on how much I didn't really like it. The first impressions of it kind of even just standing over it felt very awkward. The seat tube was really tall, so you couldn't really get the seat very low. It almost felt like a trail bike when you're sitting pedaling. At high speed, it was maybe not as stable as I would have liked and definitely didn't give me confidence. However, where I really liked the bike was Breakout, which was the kind of blue jump tech flow trail. It's a really fun trail with a lot of little jumps that you can kind of mix up every lap. That bike by far for me was the most fun in that area, and actually according to Strava, I set the fastest time I ever had on that trail on the Propain. In terms of a race bike or something that I would personally buy, it wasn't confidence inspiring enough for me to want to take that next step and consider purchasing it. At really high speed, the bike seems to deflect a lot. It's very hard to hold the line with that bike. if you made a mistake, it seemed like it would make the mistake snowball, and it just kind of added to the mistakes, where some of the other bikes, you could make a mistake and still muscle the bike into place. So some of the components I really liked on the bike were the cockpit. The stem aesthetically was really pleasing and was a nice length and height. The backdraw to the stem is you need a 4, 5, and a 6 millimeter Allen wrench to really adjust or move it or remove it from your bike. The bars on that bike were probably my favorite bars. They had the most comfortable and aesthetically pleasing sweep and angle. And then the drivetrain on that bike, for whatever reasons, was definitely the crispest, smoothest shifting drivetrain. A couple backdraws where it seemed like there was bushing play in the lowers on the fork, so it would make a lot of noise and kind of clunk around, and honestly kind of freak me out a little bit. And then the hardware on that frame would just loosen up. It seemed like we were chasing loose bolts every lap, or you just thought something was rattling loose. The bike was just very noisy. In my opinion, the bottom line on the Propain Rage is that it's probably for someone who lives at Mountain Creek or has a really fun bike park around them where they like to jump and pump and do a lot of whips and tricks. But ultimately, I think it's for the guy that just likes to send jumps and have a nice downhill bike at a bike park. I wouldn't necessarily recommend that bike for a racer.
Propain Rage. That bike was very interesting. I would say that when we first saw the bikes when we arrived at Mountain Creek, probably like a lot of our other testers, I was the most excited to ride that bike. I see it at World Cups, and everybody who rides it seems to be very agile. They're picking lines maybe other people aren't, and it seems incredibly capable. After spending time on the bike, it definitely was an interesting beast to try to dissect. In more flowy bike park situations, say riding jumps, riding trails that you're hitting turns, you're pumping over rollers, you're hitting jumps, and it's maybe not terribly beat up or a ton of braking bumps. That bike was super fun. It carried speed well. It felt like it had the most supportive rear suspension platform that I could pump my weight into, and it almost felt like I was riding like a trail bike sometimes. It just really had a nice firm pushback. It felt the lightest in the group too. It had no problem throwing whips off jumps, kind of, pushing my abilities in that sense on flow trails. Once those same flow trails maybe got a little bit more ridden in trails we were on, and there's more braking bumps and stuff, that bike had a lot more feedback than all the other bikes in our test. And a lot of that feedback, I think, to me, it felt like it was coming from the frame itself. It felt like if I was going really hot into a bike park corner that was pretty worn out and a lot of braking bumps, I would feel a lot of that chatter coming through to my arms and into my body. And it wasn't that the suspension wasn't working. My tires were tracking the ground fine, but I could just feel the impacts that I was hitting. It created a very unpredictable feeling. In maybe more technical rock gardens and whatnot, the bike carried really good speed. I found the rear suspension didn't get hung up very much. It wanted to continue moving forward. At the same time, that kind of stiffer, deflecting feel would come in, and if I wasn't right on the line I wanted to ride, and I started kind of letting the bike run away from me, it would just kind of compound on itself. I had to really either go into trails knowing exactly where I wanted to go, or back off just a hair to kind of keep the reins on the bike and not let it start riding me. So out of the group, the Propain definitely was yelling the most down the trail out of all the bikes. I'm not really sure if that has to do with the cables rattling inside the frame, or if it's just maybe the nature of the carbon construction. It kind of has more of like a hollow sound to it, kind of like an echoey noise. Components wise, the Propain had one of the nicer builds. I'm always been a huge fan of Code RC brakes, and compared to the Code Rs that were on, say, the Mondraker, it was definitely quite a step, just a step up. So tire spec on the Propain was Schwalbe's Magic Mary tire in their softest casing, and I've spent a ton of time on that tire. It's what I would always choose to race with in the past, so I was very familiar with it. I thought it performed great on the mixed conditions that we had while we were here at Mountain Creek. The only downside of that is just comparing our 4 test bikes after 4 days of riding, and the Magic Marys are significantly more worn than the other tires we've been riding. So what's the bottom line on Propain's Rage DH bike? I would say that's a great option for, you know, somebody who just wants to go ride bike parks more or less. Somebody who wants a bike that is very lively, has a very snappy demeanor. It's going to pop off of lips great. It's going to, you know, be a ton of fun to inside corners, pump rollers, find little trail side doubles on. I don't think it would be my first choice to go racing on if I know I'm going to be racing on terrain that's super rough, but I think it's something that for somebody who wants to ride bike parks and, you know, get kind of a, at this point in the US, kind of more of a niche brand, as well as like a high-end bike, like that would be a great option for them.
All right, Propain Rage. Like most of the testers, I was super excited to ride that bike. Looking at the numbers before the test, I did think that it was going to be slightly small for my stature, but honestly, I had a great time on it. The bike, in my opinion, the rear suspension was phenomenal. I thought it tracked really well in the rocks. And my experience was I was able to place that bike where I wanted it. It had the new RockShox Super Deluxe rear shock, which I thought performed phenomenal. And of course the fork was a Boxer Ultimate, so they can't really get more high-end than that. I think the Propain, and this is my very strong opinion, if the Propain didn't have that fork issue, I think we would have all liked it a lot more. I'm a really firm believer in the front suspension and the rear suspension working together to produce a good ride quality. And I mean, it may have been a little bit in my head, but there was definitely a lot of bushing play in that fork. So I think that really didn't help. So the Propain Rage, I think, is definitely geared for someone that wants to ride the bike park. It's a very stiff frame. It's very playful. It's very flickable. It has multiple chainstay settings so that you can set it up for what you want. But I'd say it's geared toward the bike park rider that wants to do an occasional downhill race here and there.
For a more in-depth analysis of Propain's Rage CF, please head to vitalmtb.com for the complete review. To check out our entire downhill bike test session, click the link at the end of this video. And make sure to add Mountain Creek to your list of must-visit bike parks. You won't be disappointed. Thanks for watching.